So I'm doing my very first book tag, and it's all about food, specifically Filipino food. So let's get started. So for the first prompt, it's adobo. Adobo from its Spanish root means marinade, or which translates to sauce. But here in the Philippines, when you say adobo, it's a meal. It's usually either chicken or pork, swimming in a lot of sauce. Adobo is an all-time favorite of a lot of Filipinos. And for a book, my all-time favorite, it's The Sinner by Tess Gerritsen. This story is a mystery thriller I've read more than a decade ago. I found this book while I was browsing through book sale, and the cover just really captured me. I'm a sucker for covers, that's the thing. In the cover, there's a dead woman sprawled right there, and then the title, The Sinner. And then when I looked at the back, I read there that the story is about 2 murdered nuns, and it was being investigated by a female detective. And then they bring in a pathologist. This pathologist, Dr. Mara Isles, then proceeded to go through the bodies of the dead nuns, and what she discovered was that one of the nuns gave birth before she was murdered. Imagine that. If you or me growing up as Catholic and then you read something as blasphemous as that is just, I really want to read this. So I bought it and I read it, and suffice to say that this book really influenced me a lot, even to the point of my career path choices. I mean, this book really affected me a lot. And I wonder if I read it now, how will my perspective of it change if I read it now? I mean, it's been more than a decade since I read it. And I'm curious, did this book age well? Will I still love it after all these years? I probably will. But, it's a curious thing. I think I really should read this book again. What's great about this book, though, is that Tess Gerritsen, the author, is a Chinese American. And before she gained fame as an author writing books for a living, she was actually a physician. She was a doctor. And not just any doctor. She wasn't even a general practitioner. She was an internist. An internist meaning she graduated, got her MD, and even went to a few more years of training to get her diplomate. So imagine that. She went back to what she loved the most, which was writing fiction. And being Asian, of course, her parents wasn't very supportive of this. I mean, I'm Asian and you watching is probably Asian, and you know what it's like. Being an author from the point of view of our parents, it doesn't get you anywhere. It's not going to pay the bills. She's a doctor, and she pursued her dream of being an author. So if you out there, if you want to go into the arts, then go and try and pursue that dream if you can and if you want to, because you'll never know. So the next prompt is durian. Durian is a fruit that's not exclusively in the Philippines, but it's definitely famous around Davao. And it's known for its pungent smell, and I really don't like this fruit at all. And you have to know, Davao is just right next door to me. I mean, it's the city that's just right next to the province I'm in right now. And I really do not like the smell of this fruit or the taste, but at least I like the candy. So durian. The prompt is heard a lot of negative things but still enjoyed. And I give that title to Da Vinci Code by Dan Brown. I first heard about this book when its movie adaptation was announced and released last 2006. It was a huge issue in our country because we're predominantly Catholic in the Philippines. And in the Vinci Code, it was implied that Jesus Christ might have been married. Imagine how the priests reacted, how all my aunts and my grandparents and everyone older just went nuts. I think, if I remember correctly, that movie was even banned from showing in our country. But I still watched it anyway because, And if it wasn't for all the commotion, I wouldn't have bothered reading this book. I wouldn't know about it and I wouldn't read it. But then, masarap ang bawal. They just had to say, don't read it. They just had to say, don't you dare look for that book. And they just had to say, don't let us see you reading that book. Yes, all I heard was, go ahead, read it, read it, read it, read it, read it. And so I did. And I never saw my copy ever again after I read that book. I'm not gonna buy another copy, but I really do want to read that book again. So, the Da Vinci Code movie was actually fun to watch. And yeah, the book was actually fun to read because it was my first Dan Brown. And Dan Brown has this way of writing where he mixes history, art, religion, and science, and they just blur the lines in between fact and fiction. And I guess that's why there's a lot who got really mad about that. And they forget that it's fiction. Come on, it's fiction. It's not saying it's fact. But, yeah. Well, I'm just glad I actually got to learn about the book anyway. If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't know. But there you go. Next prompt is pastillas. So, pastillas is more of a snack. I've read that they're traditionally made with carabao milk, not cow's milk, but carabao or water buffalo. But most I've seen lately, they usually just use any kind of milk. But the best I've tasted were definitely those made with carabao's milk. And just to plug, the best carabao's milk I've ever tasted, and yeah, mostly because I am biased, is the carabao's milk from the Philippine Carabao Center right here in Muswan, Bukidnon. And if you guys ever get to come here, I suggest you go and taste it because it's really fresh carabao milk. Not cow, carabao. Water buffalo, carabao. So for this prompt, like the pastry, it's a sweet and light book. And I'm going with the Brides of the West series, any of them. Faith, Glory, Hope. I don't really read a lot of sweet and light books because I think those are the kind of books that I need to read more. But yeah, The Brides of the West. These books I found when Doulos visited Cebu way back. I don't even remember what year it was. Maybe around 2006. So Doulos was this floating library. It's a huge ship that goes from country to country selling books for a good cause. I didn't know what I was getting into when I got that book. The ship doesn't come around every year. So I just took the chance and grabbed any book that I felt like I might enjoy. And I don't even know why I picked this book up. Because this series really is not my thing back then. But I'm glad I did because once I started reading it, it's just sweet and light. And in between all those crime thrillers I've read back then, it was a good break. And yeah, so the Brides of the West, the titles correspond to the name of the sister. Faith is the name of the eldest, and then Glory and Hope, and then there's June. June was the first that I've read before I started collecting all the rest of the books. And because of hard times, the sisters went into being mail order brides. So they write their names up on, they advertise themselves, then men from other parts of wherever they are would check this list of bride-to-bes, and then they would pick one, and then this bride-to-be, the mail order brides, would be delivered to the men who chose them. The story is very simple. It's how they adjusted to the new life with these men that could be good or could not be good to them. Just imagine you're extracted from where you're comfortable, and then suddenly you're married off to some stranger. And yeah, not really that complicated, but it's a light read. But not all of the sisters in the series end up with their husband to be. You'll have to read and find out how it goes. But usually, yeah, it's now my go-to when I just want to read something that's not stressful. So next prompt, Lechon. So Lechon is another unofficial national food of the Philippines. Lechon is not a food that's exclusively found in the Philippines. It's actually also found in the Latin Americas. But when you say lechon, a lot of my foreign friends would connect it to the Philippines. And the thing there is, in Latin America, and I've also noticed this when I was in Hong Kong, that the lechon they have is small. So I read up and found out that lechon is actually suckling pig, meaning it's a piglet. Lechon traditionally is a roasted piglet. But here in the Philippines, our lechon is not small. They're big. The bigger the better, but to a certain extent, because when it's just too big, you can't really cook it well, and then the insides is not cooked well. So yeah, but anyway, our lechon here is adult. They're not piglets. Imagine my shock when I saw a lechon in Hong Kong, and I was like, why is that so tiny? And then when I read up, okay, it's not that their lechon is tiny, it's that our lechon is huge. So lechon is supposed to be a piglet. Here in the Philippines, no way we're eating a piglet. We want our lechon big. So lechon may be problematic, but still enjoy. And that book for me would be The Mortal Instruments and The Court of Thorns and Roses, which is, I guess you could say, the Court series. So let me start with The Mortal Instruments. See, Cassandra Clare wrote this series. Initially, it was a Harry Potter fanfic. So I think Jace, arguably the main character, is supposed to be Draco in her fanfic. So if you just search through Google Mortal Instruments and then plagiarism, yeah, you will see a lot of issues over there. In Cassandra Clare's early days, there was just a lot of issues, because aside from starting out as a fanfic, and then there's the whole plagiarism thing, Clary wasn't really a likable character for me. And then Jace is, if I think about it now, I don't know why I enjoyed it, but it was so easy to get into. And then I finished the first 3 books, and then okay, I thought to myself, that's it, that's enough. There's 3 more books, but this series should have finished on the 3rd book. What more could she be writing about that it spans 3 more books, and I don't know where it's going anymore. But I still continued anyway, because I don't know why. And I still, it's, as a whole, the series there's a lot of problems in it. And I really could feel the fan fiction influence in it. Yeah, I still read it anyway. And I still enjoyed it anyway. And what's important with reading problematic books or authors that are problematic or had problems is that you can still enjoy it as long as you acknowledge that there is a problem. Like learn from it. There's only a problem if you don't realize that there is a problem. You know what I mean? And then we go to the court series, which ties up to the next prompt, which is Sinigang. So, Sinigang. Sinigang, Sinigang, Sinigang. I love Sinigang. I think that's as Pinoy can get. Sinigang. I honestly do really love Sinigang, but I can't help but laugh and chuckle whenever I hear the word or think about it, because it only ever reminds me of a certain someone who loves Sinigang. So Sinigang is Sinigang is sour food, and it's cooked in a lot of different ways. It can be pork, and it can be almost any seafood, from fish, usually fish, shrimps. But my favorite is, of course, pork sinigang. When I was in Valenzuela more than a decade ago, I lived there for about a month or two, I would go to this carinderia where they would sell food in big calderos, and then I would order 2 servings of sinigang with 2 cups of rice, and the owner would always question me, where did that food go? Because I'm not really a big person, but it's sinigang and I love it, and I'll eat as much as I can every lunchtime. Almost every day I ate sinigang when I was in Valenzuela. I love sinigang. So sinigang, sour characters, but some folks love them. First thought that came to mind was Tamlin and Rysand from A Court of Thorns and Roses. So the thing with this book is that so many people were made to love Tamlin, and then he just developed into this character that people hated. He was abusive, he was possessive, and then of course there would be people who would be Tamlin apologists. And yeah, but the thing is, he's not the only problem character in the whole series. A lot of people would probably disagree with me on this, but Rysand is actually also a problem character. You see, problem with Tamlin and Farah, however you read her name, is they don't communicate well. Tamlin is doing his best, but he still comes off, whatever happened, he still became abusive, possessive. But the thing with their relationship is there was a lot of lack of communication. The female lead, she doesn't really tell what's wrong. She doesn't communicate well. They don't talk. And then they just keep guessing around each other. And then we get Rysand, who can read the main character's mind. It does not help at all with her communication problem. She doesn't know how to communicate. And even worse, that since her mate can actually read her mind. And then Rysand is actually an enabler. He always supports everything that the main character does, and he doesn't really challenge her, Rysand doesn't question her, doesn't make her think through her plans. He just go, I support you, I You go do what you want, girl. And that is not really healthy. But here we are, so many people loving Tamlin and loving Ryzen, and they are. But to be fair with Tamlin, he actually has redeeming qualities throughout the series. He actually improves, and people are being unfair to him because, like I said, their relationship with the main character is very problematic, and he's trying his best to communicate. Even if he went down the dark road, the main character herself didn't. She was part of the problem, but the blame goes solely to Tamlin, and that is not really very fair. So there's that. I still love Sinigang. I love Sinigang. So for the next prompt, we have Kutsinta. Okay, so this is a delicacy I'm not really familiar with, and yeah, I see it a lot during events and parties, but I don't really eat it, so I can't put much thought into it. So for the books, you have Slow and Sweet. And I just have to mention Pride and Prejudice because I just want to mention Pride and Prejudice. And the other book that comes to mind would be Flipped. This is definitely a slow and sweet book because it's about two kids where during their childhood, when they first met, it's the girl chasing the guy. Once they grow up a bit and the girl stops chasing the guy, it flips. And this time it's the guy who learns more about the girl, and now he's the one doing the chasing. It's slow and sweet because it's a book for kids and it takes its time and nothing much really happens, but it's still a good fun read where you just want to sit down and not be stressed over. And for the last prompt, it's Pinakbet. Pinakbet is mixed vegetables. And another one I do not like. I don't like vegetables. I don't really like vegetables, so yeah. So anyway, Pinakbet, or books with insights and ideas that you can learn from. I think every single book, even the bad ones, you can learn from it. So there's that. But if I have to choose one that's really important, and I think a lot of people should read it at least once, I would go with Spilled Milk. This is an Own Voices. It's written by someone who went through abuse, and it's a really good portrayal of abuse because it shows how abuse can be looked over. It shows how you won't expect abuse from a certain person, like how normal they are, like how unassuming that they're just everyday people. They look normal, as if nothing happened to them, but deep down they actually went through so much, but you won't know it. And that's the thing, a lot of us are very judgmental. You see someone who's achieving so much in life and you say, no way that person went through such abuse. That's impossible. But what this book does, since it's written by someone who went through abuse, they can show you how even if they're at such a level of success that they are now, that the abuse they went through was real, and how it's not a happy ending. How there are things that after all that they went through, there are people that you really can't be okay with anymore. And yeah, it's a really good story. I accidentally found it while I was looking for free books when I had my Kindle Unlimited subscription, and I'm so glad I found it because I learned so much just from reading it. The book also has a lot of teaching material in it without sounding too preachy, because the main character in the book, it's fiction but based on actual events or close to actual events that the author went through. So the main character goes through counseling, and through the counselor, the author shows some tips that we can all pick up when dealing with or recognizing people who goes through abuse. There isn't just one kind of abuse, and usually the people who go through abuse don't experience just one kind of abuse. It's a lot to take in when I was reading the book, and yeah, it's something that we all should read at least once. So I had a lot of fun filming this video, and thank you for Ray for tagging me and Luis for making the tag, because we definitely need more tags that shows our culture, and food is definitely a good way of showing our culture. So thank you for that. And I think most Filipino booktubers I know has already done this tag, so I don't know who else to tag, but if you who are watching wants to do this tag, so go ahead, do this tag, and I'm excited to see what else all the others could think of, and I hope to see more book tags that are culture based. So yeah, until next time.